All right, welcome to Inside AVI. I'm LJ Jellison, and I'm here again with the fabulous Matt Claude.
I like the way that sounds.
Yes, VP of Engineering here at AutoValve, and also pastor in his free time. So he has a lot of
Yes.
viewpoints on a lot of different things.
Yes, you can say that for sure.
Perfect. Today we're going to be talking about youth in manufacturing, the influences that they're facing in school, in pressure from external forces, whether it's parents, society, and what manufacturing really needs. So give me a little insight into, you've had a pretty lengthy career in manufacturing. Give me your snapshot view of the role that youth are playing in manufacturing now.
I'll tell you, it's changed a lot since 30 years ago when I got into manufacturing. And I think some of the views on manufacturing has changed too. There's been maybe some negative connotations that have been given around it. I'll be honest, when I got into manufacturing, I really never thought I would. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was just graduate high school, was going to college here at a local university to be an engineer, and got in more out of necessity because I needed a job to make some money.
Right.
And I tell you now, 30 years later, looking back, it was one of probably the best decisions I've ever made, primarily because everything touches manufacturing. I mean, whatever career field you want to go in somehow is linked to manufacturing. And so when I think of youth today, and as they're looking for what are my career paths, where do I want to go with my life, manufacturing is definitely an area, whether directly or indirectly, you're going to play in that field. And so I love to be able to talk to youth and be able to show them the opportunities that exist within manufacturing, because it's really sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And when we take a look at our world, people think manufacturing, the stereotype is, dirty work, hard work, long hours. We have painted a pretty dreary picture around manufacturing. And in part, some of that is true. But in other cases, this is completely the opposite of what today's manufacturing is. A lot of facilities running high tech, very clean, and standards and protocols that make it a really great place to work environmentally.
Yes.
Give me a little insight into what your initiatives here at AVI to make the workplace, engaging for everybody, including youth.
Yeah, obviously, with whatever career path you take, you're going to spend a lot of time there. And so culture is a big piece. I think we hit on that a little bit at our last podcast. But so that's one piece to it. But the other thing is, it's no different than at your home, in your living room, having things organized, everything has its place. Those are critical mindsets that we use in manufacturing. And so cleanliness is a big thing. Being able to find things where you put them. So a thing we call 5S and organizational skills that we develop here. Those are important as we come in. So for our youth, the old pictures that I think my generation grew up with, thinking of manufacturing, kind of the dungeons and, dark places, a lot of smoke, that doesn't exist in probably some elements. I don't want to completely deny it, but a lot of the manufacturer, at least in my experience, has been completely opposite to that. I've been in medical device facilities where literally they're almost like clean room environments. Aerospace, very clean environments, because the parts we make ultimately go into an airplane. And so we need to make sure that there is no foreign debris or objects that would potentially get into those components. So we spend a lot of time really focused around obviously the culture, but then also the cleanliness in our environment. It makes it a safe place for employees, but also ensures that the products that we produce and we send out into the field are good.
Yeah, when we take a look at especially the younger generations wanting to find value, and I think we all want value in our careers. We want upward movement. We want progress. We want to get up and have something to do that's of value. When you take a look at manufacturing, it literally touches everything in our material worlds. And I think sometimes it's belittled or we minimize the effect of it, but you take manufacturing out of the picture, and there's a lot of things in the world that we do not enjoy.
Correct. We just had a high school group coming in just yesterday into our facility, and I got the opportunity to talk to them for a few minutes. And that's one of the things we talked about was literally in all elements, anything that you think of, at some point was made in a factory or in a machine shop. And so manufacturing touches everything from the paper you write on to the pens you use to the cars you drive to the food you buy at a store. Everything goes through some form of manufacturing. Depending on where your career takes you, um, guarantee at some element to it, you will be tied into the manufacturing. So it is universal. They used to say, it's the backbone of every great society, and that statement is still true today.
One of the things that we hear about consistently, and as fathers, we can kind of relate
Mhm,
is that there has been a huge pressure for the last 2 decades
mhm.
on 4-year degrees,
Yeah,
and that has made headlines quite a bit in the recent
yeah.
years as work shortages or workforce shortages have impacted the manufacturing world.
Mhm.
I know from my standpoint now, being a father, I take a look at my kids and I want them to feel value. I want them to get up and I want them to be happy with what they've chose to do. I definitely don't want to restrict them. And now we're getting even more on the blowback on the 4-year side with the student debt topics.
Mhm.
Give me the appeal to the parents. What advantages have you
Mhm.
found in manufacturing that provides a stable, secure, and kind of fulfilling life?
You know what? I'm walking through that right now because I have a 20-year-old son who's in college, and I'll first start by saying, I always encourage education at whatever level that is. So, don't want to sit here and be critical at any way by any means on education, but at the same point, education isn't for everyone. For myself, my own background, 30 years ago, I started into college, but then honestly, I stepped out for a while because I got married young to my wife. Now of 27 years.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And over these last 27 years, I actually went back to school later in life because I wanted to take a different path. You mentioned earlier about my ministry, and so that was part of that education as well. But for the young individual who is looking and they're trying to decide, do I go to college or do I not? Um, my message would be is there is a great opportunity either direction. Okay. The traditional gotta or mindset that you have to go to college to get a good job and a good career. You guys, that's false. Because again, I have a bias probably being in manufacturing now for 30 years, but that's been my story. And I worked with a lot of people, worked with a lot of people over these past 30 years that have made a great living for them and for their families. Um, in the manufacturing world. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, I'll also say this, and you mentioned earlier, education is extremely expensive. And that's something that ultimately is going to have to be dealt with because it's really unsustainable. So when I look at my 20-year-old, he's in college right now. It was a decision we made based on where he was at and kind of some of the skills that he had and what he was wanting to do. But when we look at my 14-year-old, and we're already planning for it because you've got to, because it's so expensive for college. He's more hands-on and he likes working with his hands. So I could see his path maybe being something different. We will support him in either way he goes, but I am not one who believes to have a good career and to be able to support a family, you have to go there because that wasn't my story per se.
Right. We've talked a little bit about the family unit. We talked about the advantages of manufacturing. Let's talk about the necessity from a community standpoint.
Mhm.
Living here in Ohio, we are hugely dependent on manufacturing jobs. That is a big part of our economy. I believe Ohio Means Jobs put out a report recently that if everybody who was available to work went to work, we'd still be shorthanded in the manufacturing sector. And a lot of this is kind of rampant across all industries. But again, back to the material goods side of things, the things that we need to survive,
Mhm.
it's not food related, but definitely food processing is done by manufactured goods.
Correct.
We have to have that manufacturing base in
Mhm.
place. And from a community aspect, if we steer too many people away from manufacturing, there's just not going to be the manpower needed to sustain production moving forward and our economy for that reason. So
Correct.
definitely paramount that we make a huge push to educate that manufacturing is a quality career decision.
100%. We've already seen that over the past couple years with COVID coming on the scene and some of the shortages that we experienced when you go to your supermarket and you can't find the things you want. And literally you talk to people and what is it? It's either, well, back then it was either stuck on a boat somewhere or they just could not get it from their manufacturers. And that's something we are dealing with here as well here at Auto Valve is finding the right people and enough people to be able to fulfill all of our needs. So it is a universal problem. We've got to make sure that we are continually emphasizing the importance of manufacturing and the opportunities that exist there. And the first step, I think, is really making sure people understand that there is a huge need for it, and you can make a great living in it.
Yes. And there's a lot of upward movement.
Oh,
You take a look at some of the individuals. Right now, we're doing career conversations with every employee here at AVI, getting a sense of the individual, their talents, their strengths. There's a lot of times that somebody ends up in a position out of necessity, not necessarily that's based off their passion and their strength. So being able to dive back into those employees and uncover those nuggets of gold that they have is really important. But we're seeing individuals who started at one place, especially some of the more tenured employees here. They came in at perhaps an entry level job and have just continued to climb through the ranks, up towards engineering, which is definitely possible, especially with things like tuition reimbursement that Auto Valve offers.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a tremendous amount of opportunity. What I typically tell, especially younger people in the field who are just kind of getting into whether it's in manufacturing. We do a lot with interns here, so we work with a lot of the local colleges. And in every semester, we always have 2 to 3 interns that we have on site working with our team. And one of the messages I tell every single one of them is this: ultimately, with the right attitude and the right work ethic, sky's the limit with where you can go. Not just here at Auto Valve, but in any career path that you ultimately choose. Those two things are critical because that's what's going to set you apart from everyone else, right?
Yeah.
I can train people. Manufacturers can train people, but getting that right attitude and that right work ethic, those are critical for people's success. And with that said, then you look here at Auto Valve. Yeah, we've had a tremendous amount of opportunities because as we're growing as an organization, which is great, it brings up opportunities that we have. As we continue to get on new projects, you know what? We're constantly looking for additional people. And in the first place to look is internally. If we have people internally with those work ethics and the attitude and the willingness to learn and to grow and the desire to do that, 100%, there is just a tremendous amount of growth opportunity here.
Great. Let's dial into, kind of wrapping this up, some of the solutions or some directions that parents, younger generation, they can kind of take a look at. There's a lot of privately started individual organizations now that are trying to educate students and parents on the advantages of manufacturing or careers in manufacturing. There are trade schools, of course. There are, what do you call them? The compacts. There's a lot of different opportunities for kids that are in high school and then making that transition out. Give me kind of a suggested path that you would offer to someone who's looking to maybe get a sense of what manufacturing is or a career in manufacturing, or make that transition into manufacturing.
The first thing I'd say is exposure. Don't wait till your kids are out of school, out of high school to start exposing them. There's a lot of opportunities within your schools, within the career centers, where you can take kids and let them just see and experience some of the different opportunities. I know with my 20-year-old, when he was getting ready to graduate high school, he really wasn't sure. He thought he had an idea. And what typically happens, especially those that go into college, they'll go in and you always hear after their first or second year, all of a sudden they're changing majors.
Right.
And guess what? You want to talk about getting expensive. Now all of a sudden try to have to redo classes because you're changing majors. So I think for me, it's more about making sure we expose our kids to all the as many different opportunities we can have while they're still in high school. So it gives them a feel for, man, you know what? I'm not sure if I'm really excited about this over here, but I kind of like that. And manufacturing is definitely one of those areas I would just highly encourage. Yesterday, again, we had that group in from a local high school, and just being able to walk through some of the things we did, letting them see some of the machinery that we use, looking at our CAD softwares and some of the things we can do on the computer. it's always exciting for me to see their eyes kind of open up because they really had no clue walking in the door what they were going to see. Then all of a sudden walking out, hopefully it sparks some interest in some of them. And so all that is done by exposure.
Yeah. There's so many different areas of manufacturing that individuals can get into. So the ability to pair an interest with a technical skill and find that career is awesome. We take a look at aviation, for example, in auto valve. It's big commercial jets, it's military fighter jets, helicopters. There's so many different areas of expertise that we have parts that go into. And you take a look at SpaceX, and Tesla, and all of these different things that are starting to really challenge the norms. You can be a part of that. If you have an interest or a passion, you can pair that with manufacturing and find a career.
Most definitely. Yeah, there is, a lot of times when you look at, you think of aviation, like Auto Valve we're a part of is the aviation community. Man, the scope of that is unbelievable. We just have a small little piece here that we deal with. But you've got, like you said, you've got the government, which we do a lot with our U.S. government and supporting our troops there and making sure that they have the equipment they need and but then you also have the commercial airlines. You've got NASA and what's taking place there. You've got SpaceX. You mentioned about them and what they're doing. All of those we get to be able to touch, and it's exciting to be able to talk about that with our team on the shop floor because it's one thing to make a part. You're making it, but then to actually see, hey, that part is on that machine or on that airplane or that helicopter. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
We actually had a story. This was probably a year and a half ago or so. One of our employees came to me and we were just talking, and they were actually at the local museum, Air Force Museum. And they were in there and they actually saw on one of the engines, some of our parts that we had talked about goes on those planes, and they didn't necessarily get to see the part because it's down inside the engine, but it's just exciting to know that the things you do on a daily basis really has an impact.
Yes. Going back to your exposure topic, just to wrap this up, job shadowing is a huge part of this.
That's great.
A lot of companies, it can seem like it's a pain in the butt, but we have to understand that we are exposing the next generation to what we do, how we do it, and the possibility of it. And if we shy away from those opportunities or don't get aggressive with it, that is really to our own detriment and the detriment of our communities. From the same point, students, if you find a company that focuses in something that you're passionate about, don't hesitate to reach out and ask if they will allow you to do a job shadow. Sometimes that's through a career counselor at school or your school counselor. But take the opportunity, be adventurous, be aggressive, and get the knowledge you need to make the decisions that are right for you.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, anything else that you want to add to this?
Last thing, just to add on to what you were saying there real quick. This ultimately is your career and it's your future that you're looking at. So definitely take the opportunity now to go out, see the different opportunities that are before you. Knock on their doors, ask if you can come in. I would say the same thing to parents. If you're not sure about manufacturing, I don't know if that's something for my kids. Man, come see it. Call Auto Valve. We would love to be able to give you a tour and just show you what it's about and some of the opportunities that are there for you, whether you're a student looking for a future career path or you're a parent looking at ways to be able to guide your kids. A lot of opportunity in manufacturing. We would love to be able to come alongside you and work with them.
I love that last sentiment. It's tough for parents to guide kids when they don't know where they're guiding them to.
Yes.
So the more educated the parents can be, the more open they are to the opportunities, and the more that they can help the child navigate into that path.
Correct.
So couldn't have said that any better. Well, Matt, Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
It's great seeing you again, LJ. I appreciate you having me on again.
All right. Until next time, this is LJ and Matt signing off with Inside AVI.